Good evening, everybody. Welcome, welcome. We're so glad you could make the trek all the way here to Tarpon Springs. For those of you who come from all corners of the county, because we know with Herb Snitzer's work and with Robin Odell's track record, we can attract people from all over. So we're just thrilled to have you all here. My name is Christine Rank Carter. I am the Executive Director of the Lipa-Ratner Museum of Art, and we're just absolutely delighted to have you here today. Before we begin, I just want to let you know that we've actually got this program being recorded. It's not being broadcast live through Zoom, but it is being recorded on Zoom, so I hope you're okay with that. So no bad words. And also, before we begin, I'd like to just introduce a couple of special people in the audience this evening. One is our newest member of the Lipa-Ratner Museum of Art team, our new curator, Sarah Felice, who's sitting all the way in the back. And I know we have a wonderful group of photographers in the audience this evening and artists from the community, so we're really excited to have you here. I know we're all among friends. Tonight, we have a very special treat for you as we celebrate the life and career of the beloved photographer, Herb Snitzer, with renowned photography curator, Robin Odell. And we're absolutely honored that Herb's wife, Carol Dameron, is joining us this evening too. So welcome, Sarah. Now, the Lipa-Ratner Museum of Art actually has a pretty long history with Herb, as we presented his solo exhibition In the Moment back in 2003, which is just after the museum opened. He has since been featured in numerous exhibitions and programs here, including a Focus Friday, where he was actually interviewed by our docent, Sharon Bresson, who's with us tonight, and he came and answered all kinds of questions. And he is, of course, featured in our current exhibition, Herb Snitzer in the Present, which actually happens to be one of my final exhibitions, as I was previously curator of the museum, to do before Sarah could come on and join as curator. So we actually organized this exhibition immediately upon learning about Herb's passing on New Year's Eve in 2022. And that also happened to be the wrap-up of the museum's 20th anniversary year. So it really came full circle at that time. We celebrate Herb's work actually in tandem with another beloved photographer and one of Herb's friends, Tom Kramer, who also recently passed back in August of 2022. Tom Kramer, the Palladium series, The Other Side of Dance, featured in the adjacent gallery right next to Herb, was curated by our guest curator, Robin Odell here. And we thought, what better way to celebrate Herb, but with a curator who knew Herb so well and curated Tom's exhibition. A little bit about Robin. Robin is actually, we're very excited for her. She's the newly appointed executive curator for the Florida Museum of Photographic Arts in Tampa. So congratulations, Robin. Many of you probably remember Robin very well as the curator of photography at the Museum of Fine Arts in St. Petersburg. And she has this master's degree in photographic preservation and collections management, which was through a joint program between Ryerson University in Toronto and the George Eastman Museum in Rochester, New York. Robin is also the visual arts editor and writer for the Artisan magazine, of which we have many copies up front if you would like to take one at the front desk on your way out. And she's a contributing writer for Creative Pinellas' Arts Coast magazine. And I have to thank you, Robin, for your amazing article about Herb Snitzer that was just released a few days ago. You can find that online. It's really well done, and we can't thank you enough for including the museum in that. Robin also worked with the Keith Haring Archive in New York, the John and Mabel Ringling Museum, and the George Eastman Museum, and the International Center of Photography in New York City. So we are thrilled to have her here to actually share her own experiences with Herb and talk a little bit about his career. So without further ado, please welcome Ms. Robin Odell.
Thank you, Christine. Ooh, that makes me sound kind of impressive, renowned, but it's not. Thank you very much, Christine. I'm really delighted to be here. And I was just absolutely delighted to be able to help with the Tom Kramer exhibit because he was a friend of mine as well. Just a lovely person, as is our wonderful Snitzer. I am delighted that Carol is here, and I'm going to tell her, like, if I say something wrong, or if I when I look at you like this, you have to like shake your head yes and shake your head no. If I say something wrong, like just give me the high sign, right? I'm sure I'll just be looking at you the whole time. But Herb Snitzer, a visual historian who spent his life documenting the world around him with an overriding commitment to dignity and respect for all. If you knew him, you knew how he moved through the world in this really loving and kind and aware way. And he was just a really great guy. I was fortunate enough to call him friend. I first met him, I had to like, it was at Salt Creek, which was an artist's collective and galleries. Herb had a gallery there. Carol also had a studio there. I believe that's where you first met. And then I started at the MFA in 2004 as a curatorial assistant. And that's when I really got to know her because we did an exhibition shortly after that. I also curated a larger exhibit of his work in 2018, what was called Can I Get a Witness, that then traveled to New York as well. So I have this very long relationship with the wonderful Herb Snitzer. So he was famous, of course, for his visually stunning and intimate photographs of New York jazz musicians in the 1950s and early 1960s, though we'll talk later that he took ones later than that too. His whole career is of photographing people from all walks of life and all social strata, and always with the intent to capture the struggles and joys of the people around him. He was born in Philadelphia, 1932. This is, you'll see when there's a little asterisk right there, that means that it's one of the photographs that's actually in the exhibit over here. And you can also, you'll see that it has the credit line, whereas the others don't, because it's talking about a specific piece. So this one is in the exhibit, and I have no idea if these are even people that Herb knew, but.
It's from my family line.
The woman in the middle is from Carol's family line. And the four on the bottom are from daughters from his first marriage. So it is. See, see the things we know. Born in Philadelphia in 1932, to parents who had escaped the Soviet pogroms in the Ukraine. He was, thank you, Carol, for this photograph. You didn't know I was going to put that one in there. He was the son of refugee parents in an insulated Jewish lower middle class life, but he tested into the prestigious all boys Central High School. And there is his. One of the stories he would tell is he played football, if you can imagine, if you ever met Herb. He was a man of small physical stature, not in any other way, but he did play football when he was in high school. And he told the story of the quarterback got injured. And so the backup quarterback was a Black youth. And so the coach calls in the backup quarterback, but then tells Herb, you are going to call the play. And Herb realized at that moment, it wasn't because this other lead wasn't just as bright as him or couldn't call the plays just as well as him. It was that he was white and the other man was black. And it was, in some ways, you know, his first real, like, thinking about the way that he moves through the world a little bit differently, right? And inspiring how he then started capturing the world, where the inequality was around it. And despite his traditional parents' objections, he went to the University of Arts, the Philadelphia College of Art. He had first studied drawing, but he was also taking photographs. And then in the middle of it, he got drafted during the Korean War, even though he was absolute pacifist and against all violence. But, you know, the draft is the draft. He later became a Quaker. He was stationed in the southern United States, and he brought his camera with him. And that's when he really started taking portraits of people and the people around him and those kind of things. Coming back from the war, or it wasn't, anyway, coming back from his military service, going back into the school in Philadelphia, and foreshadowing his love of music. His thesis series featured the Philadelphia Orchestra. This is a later photograph of Rudolf Serkin, but I didn't have one of those, so that's why I put that in. And then, upon graduation, he moved to New York in 1957, and needing a job, he opened a phone book, which maybe there's some people here that don't even know what a phone book is, but you know, they used to have those like big, thick books where people actually put telephone numbers and addresses, if you can imagine. And then you could actually find real people that way. And so he opened it up, and sure enough, Arnold Newman, who was a very famous portraitist photographer, was in the phone book. And so Herb called him up and ended up being his assistant. It ends up, he says it was mostly carrying equipment around, but he also was able to observe this really skilled and talented photographer. Perhaps he wasn't the nicest person to her. So he didn't last that very long, but I think he learned quite a bit. So we had, yeah, you have to think about what New York was like then, not what New York is like now, and what photography was like then. Very few museums collected photography at that time. There weren't galleries that showed photography on a general basis. And so most of if you wanted for people to see your photographs, you were either in publications, which was kind of what in the beginning Herb had kind of aspired to, was like being in Life magazine. But if to show them in the city or whatever, it was in coffee shops and those kind of things. So just to give you like a little idea of what it was like to move through the world at that time. But it was also small and insular, so you could actually even walk into the office of a magazine or something and show them your portfolio, and they would go like, oh, yes, or no, or maybe. So he had a lot of success from the very beginning. He very early on, within a couple of years, had his own exhibition at the Museum of the City of New York called Four Seasons in Central Park. He also was able to meet the great Edward Steichen, who was the curator of MoMA at the time, who facilitated the buying of 2 of his photographs that then went into the collection of MoMA, which, you know, is a remarkable thing for such a young artist. So we also made the rounds of different magazines, and selling his photos. And while he was doing that, documenting the diversity and struggles surrounding him. And one of those publications was the jazz magazine Metronome. And these are some of the photographs that he took in New York as he was walking around the streets. This one's in the exhibition. This one he used a lot. In the 90s, he started doing a lot of collages, and you find this image, this freedom now, integrated into a lot of his collages. So he gets a single gig with Metronome. They're like, go to this jazz place and take a photograph of Lester Young at the 5 Spot Cafe. And this really was the beginning of an odyssey that cemented his place in photo history. Eventually, he became the photograph editor at Metronome magazine, and that gave him access to some of the greatest jazz musicians of all time, who played in all these great little small clubs like the Half Note, the Jazz Gallery, the Village Vanguard, and he was able to hang out with all these really jazz greats. And he would be the first one to tell you that because he was, you know, a nice guy and small in stature, and he was able, like, just to kind of be there and nobody minded, you know, whereas somebody bigger personality or whatever, you know, there might have been a little pushback, but they allowed him access, you know, sometimes into the dressing rooms or just in these amazing places that he was able to take these really intimate photographs. So this is that photograph, that first one that he took for Metronome of Lester Young outside the 5 Spot, and a quote of him talking about how that night really just like changed him in so many ways. So some of the grades that he was able to take these really personal and wonderful photographs. Count Basie. You'll see, I tried to put in here sometimes some of the ones that you don't see that often. Because there was so many, he has so many photographs. So I tried to mix it up a little bit, but then sometimes you just want to put in the greats, right? They're all great. Thelonious Monk. Dizzy Gillespie. And if you ever wonder, he often printed his photographs so that you can see the edge. See how there's like a little line around that? And the reason he did that was to show you that this was not, like, this was the whole of the photograph. It's not cropped, it's not, like, this is the photograph that he took. So when you see that, you realize that's one of the things that he did. John Coltrane. Further backstage. He talks with much fondness about going on a tour with Louis Armstrong with the sextet band that they were playing. And so this photograph is when they went to pick him up at his house, and there's his wife, Louis Armstrong's wife, at the door, you know, kind of saying, "Oh, bye, see ya." And this one is in the exhibition. We won't talk about what he's probably holding in his hand. We will talk about the Star of David that he has around his neck, because Herb would often tell that story as well. And it is a documented story that Louis Armstrong, Herb also said that he didn't like being called Louis, he wanted to be called Louis Pops. We all call him Louis. So when he was very young, he grew up in New Orleans, very, very difficult neighborhood that they used to call the battlefield. He left school when he was in the 5th grade to help earn money for the family, and he started working for a Jewish family, the Karnofskis, who took him under their wing. They helped him buy his first coronet. They encouraged him to sing. And so for his entire life, he wore this Star of David around his neck in memory of that family that helped him so much when he was young. In 1959, he was hired to shoot the cover of a Nina Simone album for Colpick's record. And he and Nina really hit it off. And I'm going to segue to say, a few months ago at the Palladium, there was a Nina Simone tribute concert. And we did a little tribute to her. And Carol was so kind as to let me borrow a bunch of photographs and scan, many of which had never been seen by anyone. And so now you guys, other than at the Palladium, are the second ones, the first ones, to see some of these things that I scanned from the private collection. And so I thought it'd be interesting to see, like, you know, here's the big frame photograph, and here's actually, you know, the proofs that it came from. So running through all this work is Snitzer's belief in freedom and dignity, equity, and self-respect. He witnessed the prejudice that those Black performers encountered on a daily basis, and he really admired them for that. A quote from Herb: "Why am I, a middle-class humanist white guy, so engrossed in the worlds of African Americans and their drive for freedom and civil rights? My response is always the same. Equity for one is equity for all. Racial hatred for one is racial hatred towards all others." The demise of Metronome magazine, which kind of set in motion a lot of changes for him, as you can imagine. One of which was he took several trips to England and has some wonderful photographs that he took there, like this American Fails, actually taken in America with a woman who might not agree. But also what he did, what he was going to find, was the Summerhill School in Leston, Suffolk. It was a progressive school where, you know, you have no grades or tests, and children are encouraged to learn the things that they want to learn about. And he was very inspired by that. And he ended up creating a book based on that experience, as well as, we'll get to that in a moment, but it affected the rest of his career for the next decade plus. He did end up going back to New York, working for a few more years in New York as a freelance photographer for such magazines as Time, and the Saturday Evening Post, Look, and the New York Times. That's when he sometimes he would sell them as photographs, but most often they would send him out on a specific, like, go to photograph this person or this event. And here's two of his photographs of Tennessee Williams. The one up in the right-hand corner is the photograph with a sweet handmade little surrounding that's in the exhibition, and then another photograph of Tennessee Williams. One of the amazing Betty Davis. She doesn't look very happy. And then he leaves New York, which is a really remarkable thing when you think about it. He was having such amazing success in what he was doing, but he was inspired by Summerhill. He got an MA from Goddard College, and then he co-founded an alternative school in the Adirondacks. And he spent 13 years as the headmaster there. It's not a very good image, sorry for the blur, but I just think it's such a sweet photograph of him there in the Adirondacks reading to the children at the school that he helped found. Then he leaves there and takes a job at the Polaroid Corporation in Boston. Back in the city, he's like, oh, all my old jazz friends are coming through the city. I should look them up. And so that's what he ends up doing and starts again, like his jazz career takes a new life. Nina Simone is one of the people that he reconnected with. He tells a story that her temperament had changed, let's put it that way. But she invites him to come to Bern, Switzerland with her to document and photograph her concerts there while she's at the Bern International Jazz Festival. So he did go with her and of course took such wonderful photographs that they then invited him to be the Bern Festival photographer for 3 years. So he would go back every year and was able to take like this wonderful picture of actually he didn't take it, I guess, but he and Mona Hinton. And then, that steamrolled too, so that like even when he was back in Boston, he was still taking jazz photographs. One of the wonderful Dave Brubeck. And of course, this iconic photograph of Miles Davis in Newport, which he tells the story that not he, but someone else was asking Miles a question, and he was being very thoughtful, and Herb said he just like clicked a bunch of photographs all, and it's really a wonderful photograph. In 1992, we had the pleasure that he moved to St. Petersburg, Florida. He always loved jazz. It wasn't that he didn't love jazz, but it seems when he got to St. Petersburg, his work then really focused on people and the people's struggle for freedom and for equality. He joined the NAACP, ended up getting a Lifetime Award, and he made captivating photographs of demonstrations like this one that was in front of City Hall with some neo-Nazis. Also at the School of Americas, which is in Fort Benning, Georgia. They're protesting human rights abuses. There's several those that and here back in St. Petersburg. Also on the theme of equality, St. Petersburg has one of the largest St. Pete Pride in the state, probably certainly in the state, probably even nationally, and a rousing St. Pete Pride parade, and Herb covered those for many years. Empowering his subjects with humanity, and also capturing their playful spontaneity. That's when the parade used to be on Central Avenue. And then Interesting title, right? Chains. Hmm. This woman was, when I was doing the exhibition, I found out who she was because someone recognized her. And I swear I wrote it in my notes somewhere and I could not find, but I think she's a celebrity. Someone, does anybody recognize her? No. And he also captured some of the most famous leaders and thinkers of our time. Here we have the famous writer Norman Mailer. And just that gift that he had of capturing who somebody really was. It's not an easy thing to do. And Barack Obama, this was, oh yeah, this was when he was campaigning, and Herb went to the campaign. This one is from the Women's March in 2017. And Herb died on New Year's Eve of 2022 at the amazing age of 90, leaving behind thousands of incredible images created over a lifetime picture making. And I say making, that was one of the things that he always said, you don't take photographs. He didn't take photographs, he made photographs. He's, I mean, this is just a small sliver of all the wonderful collections that he's in, the books that he published. I brought one of them, I brought The Glorious Days of Night, my personal copy. If after this anybody wants to look through it, it's really lovely. And I finished my article on this, and I'm going to say it now too, because at his memorial, in the brochure, they said, "We love you, Herb, and you've made an immeasurable difference in the world." So I don't know if anybody has any questions. And if I can't answer them, then Carol promised she'd answer them. But yes, Karen. No, Gary asked if he was also a musician, and I do not. Oh, actually, you see, that's a Carol. That's a Carol answer.
He wanted to be, like, he wanted to be a musician, and he tried it, and he wanted a saxophone, but he didn't think he was very good at it. So then he also tried the harmonica, and he just gave it up.
Here.
No, that one.
Yeah, so what he asked was, once he came down here, was he still writing for the magazines? And the answer is no, it's not. Pretty much. And that's why, he opened a gallery and he was selling his photographs. And anybody else? Carol, that's a Carol. Christine wants to know if the works are still for sale. Carol is rubbing her chin.
Some artists will wait years and make something, and it's a event where everything sells out. It's no, sorry.
Carol says she's selling an archive. So I have two beautiful photographs hanging on my wall. No, you cannot. Anybody else? Yeah. He did eventually do digital, but he still always printed his photographs in gelatin, black and white, like labs and that kind of stuff, pretty much until almost the very end, right? But mostly he did still take film, mostly all film. Oh, she asked if he ever transitioned to digital. Like, no, he took ever at all? Oh, okay, no, I was wrong. He never did. Yeah. See, that's why she's here.
Yeah,
He didn't, he always stayed with silver gelatin. He tried with my digital camera to take a picture and he said, there's a delay. And he thought, we're taking the picture and people take a picture and then they look at it, take a picture and look at it, take a picture and look at it, and they're missing all this stuff that's going on. And so he didn't want to do it.
I don't know if when you had that big exhibit of hers at the Museum of Fine Arts, that's what was there, and it sounded like based on the label that, in fact, when I came to the house, Carol, I had asked her, did they print 1 or 2 of your photos? And there were his film photos, and then they made digital prints of them because they said that they did. Because the venture into digital prints with black and white is tricky to get the same kind of view of quality you get from photography. So, and he was like, I don't know. I said, well, it looked like they did, and if they did, I was just curious to say, amazing. It looked like regular prints. Do you know?
I do know because I curated that exhibit. So the majority of them were all gelatin, black and whites, or his collages, but there were a few of the more recent ones that we had printed. I mean, he oversaw the printing, but we had printed, and they were, inkjet prints. Yeah. I mean, we have them professionally printed, to be sure, but they weren't made in a dark room. But I get the all right, well, there's wine and cheese. And thank you.
Thank you so much, Robin. That was wonderful to hear some personal stories with that. And it's something that I completely forgot. In that time that the museum was in a transition, and I was named executive director of May 31st last year. Herb was the first person to reach out to me. It was like, I don't even know how he heard. And it was like almost midnight. I got a message the next day when I came in, and he was like, Christine, this is Herb Snitzer. I just heard that you were named director. Congratulations. And I was just like, it was so sweet. And it's so strange to, come full circle in this way. But that meant the world to me for such a highly respected artist in our community to be so giving and to reach out like that. That was wonderful. So thank you guys. Does anybody have any other questions or stories they want to share or anecdotes? No? Oh. Absolutely. So it's a small but mighty exhibit. It's just a handful of his works, and thanks to Lynn Whitelaw, who is the founding director of the Lipa Ratner, who loaned some works that will be promised to our collection. The exhibition in the present will be on view through June 25th. So you have plenty of time to view it this evening and to also come back and visit, although we're serving wine now, so that's even better. But, oh, one more question?
Actually, generously was instead we should have a women's march in 2017, if you remember the women's march. And I said I would do some work for it. He came up to me and said, well, you go to this party after and make a list. And then he said to me, you know, you have to get a permit. And when I put online that I was getting a permit, Amy Weintraub came because she figured it was for real. And the two of us with others got that women's march going in St. Petersburg. You might remember we got over 25,000 people. And so, I mean, I just said I would do some work for it. And he just knew how to get it started.
Thank you so much for sharing. Anybody else have any comments? Well, thank you. Please, I worked really hard putting that cheese and cracker on the plate and pouring the wine, so please have some. Thank you so much.